At CDX, just as part of digital transformation, we've covered open innovation many times. Kate has spoke on it. Robin has spoke on it at our events. Ritesh has as well. And it's important, obviously, being a Silicon Valley native and, okay, let's blow things up, let's disrupt, let's do all of that. Obviously easier said than done. And I'm sure we'll have some stories here about how it is easier said than done. So we're going to jump right in, and we're just going to have brief introductions, and then we'll get into the questions. So Robin, for those who didn't hear you earlier today, you can reintroduce yourself.
Sure. Robin Roberts. I am the co-founder and chief operating officer of the Novartis Biome. We basically are the digital health arm, or rather, we extend into the digital health ecosystem for Novartis so that we can partner effectively with the digital health ecosystem.
Great. And I'm going to ask you on your mic, I might bring it above your button.
All right.
There you go. Thank you very much. And Kate, again, thank you for being the co-chair here. Made my life definitely a lot easier. And just a brief bit of housekeeping. Katie Webb from Aflac unfortunately had a bit of a tummy flu. So I'm pinch hitting as a moderator. And the benefit here is that, J Labs, you started Anthem's kind of open innovation. So we get a lot of expertise. So I'm also happy that you get to talk. But if you can share just a bit about yourself.
Sure. Nice to see everybody. Kate Merton, I'm the Executive Director of Chicago Arc, which is a venture collaborative based in Chicago in the Midwest on we look into health equity related technology. But in a prior life, probably useful for this discussion, I used to be the head of J Labs on the East Coast, so I opened up New York, worked in Boston and Philly, that's Johnson & Johnson's innovation group, and I also opened Anthem's digital incubator, so thanks for having me.
Great. And Paula, thank you for tolerating one or two of my blind emails and, who was Drew and who's CDX and what's this conference about. Thank you so much for joining us, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, happy to participate, so didn't mind the blind emails at all. I'm Paula McCree, and I am Managing Director at the Mass General Hospital Healthcare Transformation Lab, and we're a group that focuses on early stage innovation ideas and supporting the providers and other staff in moving those ideas forward.
That's great. Thank you very much. So there's a lot to talk about. Macroeconomic conditions and labs and innovation centers, we'll probably jump into that. But Robin, let me just start with you and just a little bit about Biome and some of the great things that you're doing, and how does that fit as sort of an open innovation or an external engagement, whatever you want to call it. How does that fit into the mothership with Novartis, and what is that relationship like?
Yeah, sure. So I'll describe a little bit about it. Hopefully it won't be too much of a repeat for the folks that were here this morning. But the Biome actually was launched in October of 2018. As I said, we're an extension into the digital health ecosystem is the purpose of the Biome. We launched in San Francisco with our flagship location, but now we have 15 locations, or 15 hubs, we call them, in 15 different countries. So we cover basically every major market on the planet. Some of the most recent ones include one in Biome Sub-Saharan Africa, which is a virtual biome that we recently launched. One that I'm extremely passionate about, particularly because of its overall mission to leveraging the digital health and digital health tech capabilities in a part of the world where it's often left to be the second, third, or fourth fiddle to actually utilizing that. And often a lot of the digital health solutions are developed without that change in fundamental foundation in mind, right? So it's been a fantastic opportunity so far. We're ever growing. We have another 6 or 8 biomes that will likely launch over the next 12 months. So we continue to look for those particular nodes that are in place all over the world, where you find opportunity meeting talent, and that talent then creating solutions in the healthcare space that need to be amplified beyond just that particular region. And we utilize our network then of biomes in different countries to lift and shift things that work and expand that where needed. We did something similar we just recently did something like that in Okay, we just recently did something like that in France, where we were working with a company called TLAC, where there was we identified, or rather the French Biome identified a solution that really helps identify patients with a particular disorder in their eyes, and uses virtual reality and other kind of gaming opportunities to rectify that issue. That problem is not a French problem solely. So we lifted and shifted and said, this needs to be something that is, global, not necessarily just sitting in France, where it would have sat for some time had that the Biome not come in with that network to be able to expand it.
Yeah, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that, because I think it's we get very myopic here in the United States, and for good reasons. And some problems are unique to the United States and the population here, but the learnings from around the world just must be great. And we also want to talk about how you've scaled this so quickly. That's quite a number of biomes in a short amount of time. Kate, just in terms of maybe talk about the experience at JLabs and its role there, but then also as you kind of came into Anthem and said, I can kind of architect this the way I want to. What was different about those two experiences, and leading into, if you were architecting sort of an open innovation or a lab or an external engagement type of ecosystem program, what are those top line things that people need to do? But maybe start with JLabs first.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about the experience of how I've gone from working for large corporate innovation to a payer innovation to now working with health systems, and there definitely is an evolution of story behind that. So for those who aren't familiar, JLabs, innovation labs for Johnson & Johnson, no strings attached. If you want the up-to-date information around it, you should see Melinda Richter, who is sort of the brains behind it all. She's truly phenomenal, and Biome has managed to scale JLabs around the globe. It's a no strings attached incubator in large hubs. It concentrates in farm, device, consumer, digital health, and it provides mentoring, does not provide funding, but it does provide mentoring, appropriate space for the companies to develop, and most importantly, inroads into the ecosystem. So I was lucky enough to lead the activities for a couple of years on the East Coast, and the experience there was that there is a ton of innovation going on in each city. The best thing that you can do for them is making sure that they get the right services at the right time. Timing is everything, and a little bit of luck. And I think one of the things that led me from JLabs over to Anthem was every time I spoke to a digital health entrepreneur that was in the JLab system, and this was globally, because I ended up speaking to all the global ones, I said, have you spoken to a US payer yet? And over half of them would be like, why would I do that? And I was like, well, like it or not, they probably end up going to paying for your solution, or they've got the relationships you need to get your solution paid for, unless you're DTC, and after DTC I guarantee you're going somewhere else. So then a friend of mine was headed over to Anthem. He was leaving Apple, and he said, Kate, what do you think about working for a payer? And I was like, well, I'm super ignorant about that, so maybe I should take that job. And that's why I ended up at Anthem, because I had the opportunity to start up an entrepreneur in residence program, as well as look at technology that would come in to Anthem. And just to sort of give a bit of information about the EIR program there, the key thing was any EIR that wanted to come into Anthem, we said, you need to go live and work in the company for 6 months first. I'm sure you've got great ideas, and I'm super ready to give you a $500,000 check to get it going. But until you've lived in the company and you understand how it works, maybe how it doesn't work, who the important people are, who makes the decisions, and also what is the infrastructure that you are going to have to integrate with in order to be successful, you need to do that first. And so they were absolutely wonderful group. They did exactly as they were asked. And so when they came back and gave their ideas around startups, it was incredibly easy to fund them, because they'd done a lot of the hard work around how's this truly going to work in the real world of Anthem, which then led me to my current life of leading Chicago Arc, because one of the things I learned being at J&J and then being at Anthem is that someone's healthcare experience today is very rarely just about the doctor's visit that they have, whether they can actually have access to an app. It's about what happened to them, where they were born, the education they got, the experiences they were given, and the opportunity they were given. So everyone knows about SDRH. So what we're doing in our current initiative is concentrating upon technology that can help in the near term in health equity issues in Chicago, but in the long term, how we can give back some of the profits from the $100 million fund that we're raising back to the community to concentrate on social entrepreneurship in the aspects of SDRH. So help right now in tech, but long term in the things that have got you to your healthcare point right now.
That's fantastic. And Paula, in terms of, it's great we have, two folks here have looked at national and global, and then we have something I call almost hyper-local here. Tell us the background of the lab there and its mission and some of the things that you're doing.
Great, thank you. Yes, we Mass General Brigham, we're at Mass General Hospital. It's part of Mass General Brigham and the Healthcare Transformation Lab. Our mission is really around improving the experience of the healthcare delivery system for patients and providers. So it is a much more local kind of approach, and it was founded with the understanding that the pain points are best understood by the people on the front lines. And so that is really where we focus all of our activities and our efforts. It was founded in 2014 and have done a number of different types of projects, but again, always focusing on the frontline providers, where their primary goal is in an academic medical center. Not only is it, there's really two things primarily: caring for the patients and publishing papers and doing studies in terms of more of the diagnostic and clinical types of work. So the Healthcare Transformation Lab has carved out a niche around the healthcare delivery system processes versus the innovations around the clinical and the diagnostics. And this is where digital comes into play, because there's so many different applications where digital can help or some kind of technology can assist. And one of the other parts of what we do is trying to infuse the concepts around innovation. And I heard this a little bit earlier this morning, that innovation doesn't happen in a small group within an organization and then everybody else is out there busy following their priorities. What we're trying to encourage is our group can provide you with the skill sets and the supports that are needed while you're out there, taking care of the patient, saving lives, and you don't have necessarily the skill sets or the time to devote to doing the market scan, to doing the research, to doing all of the prototyping and the iterations. Our team has been established to take on those kinds of functions. And one of our earlier projects that we've continued, or the one that's been one of the most enduring, is an open innovation challenge. And it's using crowdsourcing technologies to actually just ask people, what are your ideas? And having those ideas come from anybody within the organization or in that particular department, regardless of your level, regardless of your title, regardless of your clinical background or experience. You're the front line, you know what's important. And then having those ideas being anonymously submitted, and then having the crowd vote to say which one of these ideas they feel makes the most sense, resonates most with them, and then we then have them complete an application, we judge that application, and then we award that particular idea or ideas the opportunity, we'll budget and an opportunity to be developed. And not only does this get us the ideas and the pain points that are really real and that resonate, but it also, in return, the staff are feeling like, yes, my voice is heard. I have some autonomy over my existence here. So it's using that, has a dual approach of getting the best ideas, but also addressing some of the concepts and issues that we're dealing with today around staff burnout. And not feeling like they have any say in what is happening to them. So it's a way to infuse the culture with the activity and also get the right ideas and develop the ones that are most appropriate for the mission of the organization.
That's great. And what I really want to dive into is value creation, right? And we went through, and not just in this vertical, in multiple industries. Everyone started opening a Silicon Valley Innovation Lab, and I got an innovation center. Atlanta's turned into a hotbed of sort of open innovation, certainly Boston as well. How do you avoid innovation theater? Like, how do you actually create product, that the mothership actually eventually adopts and it goes to market, as opposed to, okay, well, we're playing around with some cool technologies and we have a lab and it's a nice press release, right? And you can take people around and give them tours. How do you actually create value? And maybe I'll start with you just in terms of the challenge. Like, how did you, turn that into actual solutions out in the field for, your patients?
Well, I think it's a great question, and it really does relate directly to why we developed the program the way we did, is because we wanted to be sure that we were creating value. And by asking the individuals that are actually going to be the end users immediately draws that, and then we design the programs generally with a theme that's related specifically to part of the mission of the organization. So we automatically are getting that buy-in from the senior levels of the organization around the concepts that are being brought forward. It isn't a just wide, tell me your ideas, which ends up being just a complaint box. We focus it on particular healthcare delivery system challenges. So we provide some of that education and socializing around the problem, so that what then comes through with the voting of the audience, they're also demonstrating this is the area where I feel that we're going to see some value. And then as the ideas are then judged, we have an expert panel, someone who is a subject matter expert, someone who's an end user, a casual observer, as well as someone who has some operational knowledge to evaluate each application, so that all throughout the process we're making sure that what is bubbling up is going to be of value to the organization going forward.
That's great. And Kate, through your experiences there, and you can teach a course on some best practices, I would think, right? What were the systems there, the protocols, the structure in place in regards to, okay, let's not make this innovation theater. How are we going to turn this into real product? Whether it's at JLabs or Anthem, and what your recommendations might be in terms of best practices to not make an innovation theater. Did you start with, we're trying to solve a specific problem and let's start there, and then engage startups and academia to solve this specific problem? How did it work at JLabs and Anthem?
So JLabs is no strings attached, and you could come into JLabs and not be working on something that was core to J&J's strategy. That was one of the premises. They wanted to see everything that came through. So I think what is really important is to understand what is value to the organization. So for Johnson & Johnson is a wonderful way to have your finger on the pulse, excuse me, of everything that is going on. Now, would you say that's going to give them value because they were able to discover a molecule quicker? No, there are other ways to do that, but it is a wonderful way to give value to the organization, to be seen to be innovative and keep a finger on the pulse. So that was a different model to Anthem, whereas in Anthem the value truly was work out what the problem is and then get expert people that may come from outside to come on and build it with you. So I really do think that the first part of like what's value to you is important. I've actually heard of very large corporate organizations that you'd be familiar with that have a venture fund, not because they're looking to make a profit, just because it is a wonderful way during the diligence process to understand what the heck is going on in the industry.
Right.
So there's many definitions.
It's very interesting. A friend of mine is at Salesforce Ventures, and I said, what's the investment thesis at Sales? He's all, we're just a LP, we're just a limited partner. We don't care necessarily. They want to make sure if they have some nice exits, but they're just an LP so they can get a sneak peek about what's happening in Silicon Valley. Get really early stage and be an investor. So it's similar with that.
Yeah, and I know that when I know like Biome was being created as sort of, I was leading JLabs, and we actually had a JLabs company that I think was in the Biome, and I think that the companies just looked at it different. J&J did it for a different kind of reason, open innovation, finger on the pulse, but I think, and you'll speak better to it, you were looking for very specific answers to your model.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, so for us, it's really interesting because I speak a lot about this when I speak about entrepreneurship, which I do a lot of. Apparently, I do a lot of speaking about. For me, I firmly believe that it is the key is understanding who is across the table from you, right? And what I mean by that is that the most important person as an entrepreneur for you is your board and leadership, right? You need to understand what you're doing is linked, or make the connection for them that what you're doing, the innovation that you're putting forward, that the category of innovation that you're looking into is linked to what's important to the objectives, to their objectives, which you assume are the same as the objectives for the company. Now, as an entrepreneur, that's the customer, right? So you're putting the customer at the center of the journey, and we've heard that a million times over. But you need to make that distinction as an entrepreneur. Now, I'm not saying that as an entrepreneur you don't have the customer there as well, because we certainly look at it as both being across the table from us. So it's important for us to be focused on bringing value to all parties involved. But it is the onus is on you to ensure that you're connecting those dots, right? It's too often I will, have a conversation with founders in particular, but not to say anything poor about founders, but founders in particular who will say, well, as long as the tech works, then we're good, right? It'll speak for itself. In the tech world, that makes sense, right? Build a better phone and you're likely going to have a good market share, right? Build a better fridge, you're probably going to have a better market share. When it comes to innovating in healthcare, that's not always the case, right? There are so many other things and such a huge legacy system that it needs to integrate into effectively that is just as important as the tech. And if you don't do that, then it won't go anywhere. And that great tech will just sit on a shelf.
Right. And thinking about that, we're coming into this sort of macroeconomic condition, right? So we all have to justify our existence, I suppose, in all of our jobs. There's going to be the temptation for C-suites and those who control the purse strings to cut. And these can be seen as cost centers, right? So how are you, and Paula, we'll start with you, and how are you sort of not justifying your existence, because that sounds a bit crude, but in terms of the metrics that you're sharing with management at Mass General Brigham, in terms of why this lab should continue to not only be funded, but to invest further in this lab. What are those KPIs, and proving the value creation that I talked about?
Well, I think there's a number of ways that we're measuring it, and some of the other programs that we do. In particular, we have a fellows training program, and so we've trained 6 or 8 different fellows throughout the years, and we've been able to demonstrate their progress. So almost every single one of them, through our tutelage, has been able to secure additional grants to carry their projects forward. So that's one of the ways.
So you're helping them you're helping in terms of getting grants as well, and so you don't necessarily have to fund it all. Okay, that's interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're in a very fortunate situation in that we are philanthropically funded within the hospital,
right.
So we have a little bit more flexibility around the kinds of things that we can do. But that is one of the measures that we've been able to demonstrate our value. A lot of what we teach in those with the fellowship program is what we're also sharing with the staff.
Right.
And as we're moving more and more towards concepts around employee burnout and presenteeism, these kinds of programs can help us to demonstrate that yes, people are staying because they're feeling their voices heard, they're feeling that we have a culture that they want to remain in.
Right. Kate, any best practices in terms of, okay, if you're talking with the CFO at corporate and he or she is questioning your existence, what works as far as the KPIs and showing the value?
I think the CFO should always question innovation's existence, and I think the answer to it is absolutely come up with a predetermined, what is the outcome you're interested in? I'm going to measure the heck out of it. Yeah. If I get gravy on top, that's fine, I'm going to report it to you too. And I think sort of in the organization I'm running now, at the end of the day, we work with hospital systems. If those hospital systems cannot show that they've been able to better care for a patient, both from a clinical and from an emotional perspective, we have not done our job, and we're being held to those. So I just work out the measurement, measure the heck out of it, and come up with things to augment your performance.
That's great. And same question, Robin, in the context of you've scaled very quickly globally. So marry my question with sort of I want continued investment and I'm scaling this globally. You're going to have 15 or 20 of these within a couple of years. How have you managed that in terms of the people that are writing your checks?
Yeah, look, I work at Novartis. I have to prove my existence or why I should exist every year. So that's just the way it is, right? It's every year you well, yes, I was trying to be nice, but yes, it is pretty much weekly. So it's just part of the business, right?
Yeah.
And then it goes back to what I said earlier and what was said previously. It's really about understanding what's important to your leadership, but keeping in mind that changes by the person,
sure.
And sometimes by the quarter,
right?
So there's a time where MPV score is all people are looking for, and then there'll be another time where it's all about top line growth or
proof of concepts and things like that.
Or maybe you're just looking for a snapshot into Silicon Valley, and it just really depends on what is needed by that individual. But that assessment of what it is you're measuring and why you're measuring it needs to happen regularly.
Right.
It can't happen. And this is a mistake that I made.
even be proactive, right? Don't necessarily wait for the review or whatever.
It's a mistake that I made when I first got into the entrepreneurial business, right? Where I started my first first kind of organization inside of a large company. And I thought, okay, we've got our metrics set out. Our senior, leadership is behind it. I don't have to worry about that anymore. Now I just have to worry about delivering on what I've promised.
Right.
Well, you're kind of leading a blind ship at that point in time, because what happens is that goalpost will move, that metric will change.
Right.
And then you'll go talk to leadership and say, look at all the wonderful work that I've done, and here's the way that I'm measuring it. And they'll say, yeah, that was 3 quarters ago.
Right,
I don't really care about this particular metric or that particular metric.
Right.
How do you measure up to this, right? And if you don't have that answer at that point in time, you immediately become cost center. It becomes immediately apparent.
And that's the
that
last
you are
thing
a
you
cost
want to
center,
be, is pure
and
cost center, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you are something that can be reduced in order to save the bottom line, right? And it's where you don't want to be.
No, I agree. So we have to wrap. And the one thing I will add in terms of open innovation programs, a friend of mine was the head of mobile and apps and emerging tech at American Airlines. And it turned into a huge just employee morale thing. So he started a hackathon. It was an internal hackathon, only American Airlines employees. Started as 30, and I was fortunate enough he asked me to judge, which was a cool experience. And it all had a Star Wars theme, and everybody dressed up in Star. It was a great party. By the time he left American, it was 1,000 hackers, and they were all employees of American Airlines. It was a huge party. The CEO came out, and I asked him, what's the benefit? I asked the CEO, Doug Parker, at the time. He's like, look, this is just great for our employees. And in addition, yes, they were getting real world product out into the market, and they had the business cantina there, and the hack teams could go talk to the business line people. But it really can also be, Schwab also rotates their people, their employees, through their innovation centers, almost like a management training program. So it can also benefit the employees. Thank you so much. Thanks to both of you for traveling. Continued success here in Boston. Thank you so much for taking my email and joining us. And I'm going to bring Michael from KPMG up here, as he knows he stands between all of you and lunch. So again, thanks to everybody here.
Thank you.